Namaskar. This is Human Geography, and the topic today is population conflicts. In human life, conflict is always a theme song. It follows human beings wherever they go. In today's lecture, we will look at human conflicts and disputes from different angles. And look at some of the factors which cause conflicts. It appears some of these factors are innocent factors, but they may cause conflicts. Now, there are several such factors which can be categorized as cultural, economic, social, environmental, political, and even psychological. Now, they do influence distribution, density, population characteristics, and in fact, the dynamics of population. So, environmental factors such as this, availability, accessibility, and affordability of such factors, a school or a health unit, may bring in human conflicts because of human competition for accessing such services and sources. Among the economic factors, economic development itself is a process that brings human conflicts. What are the resources being used for economic development? Do people of certain wealth or certain socio-economic status have such resources, therefore they can develop, that there could be household economic development? What are the political factors? What is the government's policy? Is the government's policy in helping the people to achieve a certain economic development? Or are there many conflicts that reaching economic resources and benefiting from them is a problem that it leads to conflicts? Or are you living in a rural area or an urban area? Do you have access to certain services like banking, for example, or credit, for example, in a rural area? Because they do not have banks, or they do not have loans that could be in small interests. That may be difficult for a farmer, for example, to find a credit source, a bank credit source, which could be easy on terms of repayment. So you have a variety of factors like the environmental, economic, social, political, and even psychological. We could take on such factors as language, religion, which could be the cause for human conflicts. Do people speak one and the same language, or do they have multiple languages? Is there discrimination among people because of a language? A religion could be another cause for human conflicts, as you see in India and other parts of the world today. A race could be another reason. The color of the skin could be a problem, could be one that creates human conflict. We do know of racism across the world and the developing. No country in the world is devoid of racism, because in every country there is some sort of racist tendencies which cause human conflicts, conflict between groups of people of different color, different cultures. So what factors influence population growth rates? for example? Does the country have modern medicine and hygiene practices? What is the level of average education? Is the country industrialized, and do the people live in urban areas? These are easy enough questions to answer, but they do not bring too much conflicts. But if you consider, because of a certain religion, there may be conflicts. There are still people who are considered first generation educated. There are still a large number of families where children are not being educated because of a social or economic reason, that right to education is denied to them, and that causes conflicts. So there are a wider number of factors that cause conflict, and the population or human conflict is a result of a combination of all these factors. Now let's take migration as an example and see how migration happens. Now there is a theory in migration called push and pull theory. There are certain factors which push people from their homes in search of jobs elsewhere. Push factors are factors which force people to move. These could be overproduction, religious persecution, a lack of job opportunities, agricultural decline, and even conflicts. Certain families may be involved in certain conflicts within the village they live in with certain other families, and this becoming the reason for them to migrate to other places, to stay away from difficulties. So push factors like religious persecution, lack of job opportunities, agricultural declines, and conflicts result in further conflicts of human mind. So those who are in need of making a decision to stay or move have conflicting ideas crowding their minds, and there is environmental degradation that people are forced to move, forced to go away where they have the roots. And on the contrary, you have what you call pull factors. Pull factors are those factors which attract people to an area. This could be a religion. For example, there is a favorable climate for Muslims in Middle East countries. Now they would prefer to go to these countries to work, find a job, live in there for a while, and return rich enough. So it takes them away. Most of the men and boys from these households go away to live alone, to make a living, to make money, and to send remittances home. That it creates conflicts in their minds. How long to stay? How long to suffer? How long to stay away from the loved near and dear ones? So economic opportunities available in their own places of living could be a blessing in the sense that they could stay away from going away. Sometimes you need to go away to a place where you need to learn a language. That you have to be a person who knows multiple languages. Unless you know the language of the land, you may be at a disadvantage. Now, there may be a government which says you have to learn that particular language if you have to live and work here. Now we come to that group of factor called spatial factor. We'll only take one example of a spatial division as a force of conflict and cooperation. A spatial division can bring about both conflict and cooperation. Spatial divisions are regions of the Earth's surface over which groups of people establish social, economic, and political control. Spatial divisions may generate conflict and/or cooperation. I must bring to you the idea of social area analyses at this juncture. If you take a village and if you do a social area analysis, you would find in that village, any village for that matter in India, that you find a group of people occupying a particular area within that village, another or a third and fourth group occupying different areas within the village. The selection of the area to occupy is indeed an example of the power of the people. Most of the groups which are powerful take advantage of areas within the village. If you take a neighborhood, for example, in a town, it could happen in the neighborhood as well, where you have a particular area, posh area, where elite occupy. So there are situations in neighborhoods or in villages where we can see social areas as typically expressions of social divisions, as such divisions cause conflicts within the minds of people, and they may find expressions in their action. Of course, a school district, a city or neighborhoods within the city, an election district, a regional district, or a state. All of these could be cause for conflicts. In India and in other countries, we have any number of conflicts because of these spatial divisions. Now, why do we have these spatial divisions? Why are spatial divisions necessary at the local and the regional levels? There are several reasons. One is the desire for government to be closer to home. Second is the need to solve local problems. And the third is the need to administer resources more efficiently. So because of all of these reasons that we need social divisions. Citizens may argue over boundaries. Of course, in India, or in India in relation to other countries, we've always had some sort of border disputes, boundary disputes. Negotiations are on all the time. There were conflicts. There were military conflicts because of that. Citizens may also have a low tolerance for different cultures, which is again a reality in the world today. Although the world is becoming one culture. Every country is subscribing to a common culture. And there are certain extreme viewpoints about preserving one's culture. There are reasonable ideas also about preserving one's cultures. The tolerance levels of individuals may result either in cooperation or in conflicts. India has a number of examples for such conflicts of different cultures. Citizens may fight or compete over a scarce resource. The one good example of a scarce resource is water. People in this country have always been fighting over or disputing water rights. There is something like vote bank, and that politicians promote caste or community divisions such that it results in conflicts. Let's take another example. Spatial divisions or administrative divisions can be created in order to manipulate an electoral area, usually by altering the boundaries. This has happened before, and this will happen again, and this will continue to happen across the world. In America, they have a word for it. They call it gerrymandering. There was a president who caused division of a state in such a way that he would have the advantage of winning. And therefore, the word gerrymandering has come into force to mean spatial divisions or administrative divisions can be made in a way it could be manipulated. It could be advantageous for a political party. There are also reasons for cooperation. Once we look at what are the reasons for conflicts, we would find the reasons for cooperation are the opposite. Now, for example, a natural disaster like an earthquake or a volcanic eruption, or even floods, a tsunami, for example, could be a reason for cooperation among people. Economic advantages, attractive new businesses could be one of the reasons people can cooperate. People may also cooperate if there are cultural similarities and ethnic backgrounds among two or more such cultural groups or ethnic groups. Addressing regional issues like waste management or magnet schools, schools that attract students, and transportation could be the reasons for cooperation as well. So, factors that cause conflict and the factors that are diametrically opposite to those factors could be the reason for cooperation. Now, when we look at population conflicts, there are several causes which relate to or which bring on human conflicts. To name a few, civil wars. There are any number of civil wars in Africa. There were civil wars in our areas, in adjacent areas. There are insurgencies in India, in other countries across the world. There are population displacements. Civil wars and insurgencies may lead on to displacement of the people. Why? Even economic development can lead to displacement of people. In India, for example, there were dams built. Certain dams have given rise to human conflicts because of displacement of a large number of people. For example, Narmada Dam. Narmada Dam displaced hundreds of thousands of people who are fighting against leaving their roots. They want to be anchored in their own roots. There are also problems in relation to resettlement of these people. They are not compensated for the loss of land. They are not given alternative resettlement areas. They are not properly rehabilitated, and they are not given land to carry on a living, and so on. So people in slums, for example, are constantly threatened of evacuation. In our cities, there are slums which are objectionable and which are non-objectionable. Objectionable slums are those slums which have no legal sanction to be there. The United Nations defines a refugee as any person who, owing to well-founded fear of being persecuted for any reasons of race, religion, nationality, member of a particular social group, or political opinion, is outside the country of his nationality and is unable or owing to such fear is unwilling to avail himself of the protection of that country, and he is or she is a refugee. The problem lies in the definition of who is a refugee. Sometimes, how do we recognize a refugee? There are no international agreements, for example, to protect people who cross boundaries for the economic survival. There are conditions to qualify for a refugee status. One of the conditions is political persecution, and it must be demonstrated. And the person who seeks to be a refugee must demonstrate how he was politically persecuted. There's an international boundary that must be crossed. Domestically displaced persons do not qualify to be refugees. Protection by one's government is not seen as an alternative. Sometimes, in some places, the government may be the persecutor. The government may be incapable of protecting the citizens from persecution. Of course, there are such instances. There are also today what we call environmental and economic refugees. There are people who can no longer gain a secure livelihood in the homelands because of what are primarily environmental or economic factors of usual scope. Sources of such are natural disasters or human alterations to the environment, for example, climate change, or contamination or pollution of the environment, lack of development and opportunities. These render continued residence in that particular location unsustainable. Mozambique is a good example. In February 2000, floods made 1 million people homeless. It destroyed agricultural land and cattle. So if you look at refugee per continent, there are refugees in every continent, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in North America. So there are refugees. And the refugees in many countries are far more in number that the countries find it difficult to manage them or provide them with reasonable livelihood. India is one good example where you find such a situation. Now, if you look at a map of the world, and you would see the origins and destinations of refugees. Now, the countries which gave rise to refugees have also been countries which gave asylum to refugees. So, to sum up, the seemingly innocent factors such as social, economic, cultural, environmental, and spatial factors are indeed the reasons for human conflict. One major factor that causes human conflict in the world is the access to resources, access to job. Another that causes conflicts is the generation of refugees across the world because of civil war, and the countries receiving them finding it difficult to manage and to provide for every need of the refugees, like India, for example. So it appears human conflicts also occur because of spatial factors, spatial divisions of the country into cities and towns and villages and neighborhoods and whatsoever, and also as districts. Sometimes there is manipulation of spatial division. such that it provides a political advantage for certain political parties. And therefore, such divisions bring about conflicts. But there are also factors like natural hazards and disasters, which often provide for a reason to cooperate and to be considerate about different divisions and ethnic groups of people and provide them with recovery and rehabilitation facilities. So, the factors that cause human conflicts are several, and that human conflicts are existing and will continue to exist as long as these factors operate in a given particular way. And unless we try and evaluate these factors and develop strategies to overcome such conflicts, the conflicts in number would not decrease. Conflicts would go on. Political differences and cultural differences cause greatest of the human conflicts. So we have to be wary of such political and other factors and try and resolve the problems of humans involved in such conflicts.